My hoa fined me for a garden gnome, so I got on the board. I, 34F, moved here 3 years ago with my husband, and we honestly loved it at first. It was peaceful, clean, and seemed like a great place to raise our 2 kids. But then, the HOA showed its true colors. This is the tale of how a garden gnome turned me into the neighborhood's biggest enemy, and how I ended up turning the tables. 1. The gnome that started it all. So last spring, I bought this adorable little garden gnome. His name was Frank. He was about 2 feet tall, had a fishing pole, and sat peacefully by our flower bed next to our porch. My kids loved him. Heck, even the UPS guy commented on how cute he was. But one day, I got a letter in the mail. A violation notice from the HOA. Decorative lawn ornaments exceeding 18 inches in height are prohibited in front-facing yards. You are being fined $50. Excuse me? We have neighbors with giant flamingos, Halloween props that stay up until January, and one guy literally has a rusty car in his driveway, but my gnome is the problem? I laughed at first. Thought it was a mistake. But nope. I called the HOA office, and the woman on the phone, let's call her Karen, because of course, told me. We have to be consistent with community standards. When I asked how many other people had received violations for similar things, she paused and said, "We don't disclose that information." Suspicious, right? 2. The plot thickens. So I decided to observe. Every day for a week, I walked through the neighborhood with my stroller, casually taking pictures of every lawn ornament, decoration, and front yard inconsistency I could find. Let me tell you, we were not the only ones breaking rules. One house had a 12-foot werewolf in April. Another had a giant plastic deer that's basically life-sized. And don't even get me started on the neon wind chimes 3 houses down. I printed everything, organized it into a binder, yes, I went full petty, and emailed it to the HOA board asking why I was the only one being fined. I got a vague response about ongoing investigations. 2 weeks later, I got another fine, for $100 this time. The offense? Failure to remove previously notified lawn violation. So now they were doubling down. I was furious. 3. Enter, full revenge mode. I knew the HOA board was made up of mostly longtime residents who seemed to think they ran the neighborhood like a tiny dictatorship. So I started attending meetings. They were always held at the community center, and usually had like 6 people in attendance. At my first meeting, I just listened. But at the second, I brought receipts. I calmly asked, "Can you show me where in the bylaws it states the height limit on decorative items?" They scrambled. Turns out, the bylaws hadn't been updated in 15 years, and the wording was ambiguous at best. The 18-inch rule was based on an old interpretation that wasn't even properly documented. I brought that to everyone's attention, and people started listening. I kept attending. Asking questions. Connecting with neighbors. And then someone pulled me aside and said, "You should run for the board. We need someone with a spine." Game on. 4. The election. HOA elections came around that fall. I created a simple flyer. Tired of selective enforcement? Want transparency and fairness in our neighborhood? Vote, my name, for HOA board. Also, long live Frank the Gnome. I passed it around, knocked on doors, and told my story. Turns out, I wasn't the only one who'd been unfairly fined. One woman had been fined for a non-neutral front door color. It was light blue. Another guy got fined for leaving his trash bin out for too long. It was out for 3 hours. The votes came in, and I won. I joined the HOA board. And you better believe the first thing I did was propose a revision of the decoration guidelines. We rewrote the bylaw, removed the arbitrary 18-inch rule, and added language that required equal enforcement and photographic evidence for violations. Frank the Gnome? He's still in my yard. With a little sign that says, "Board approved." 5. What's next? Oh, we're just getting started. I'm pushing for an online portal where residents can see who's being fined and for what, because transparency matters. I'm also working with some of the younger residents to make the HOA less rigid. No more passive-aggressive newsletters or secret fines. And yes, we're investigating some suspicious use of HOA funds from the old regime. HOA fined me $50 for a harmless garden gnome. I got receipts, exposed their hypocrisy, ran for the board, and won. Now I'm rewriting the rules, and Frank the gnome is my tiny, smug sidekick. Update: my HOA fined me for a garden gnome, so I got on the board. After getting elected to the HOA board and rewriting the petty lawn ornament rule that targeted my garden gnome, Frank is still thriving. By the way, things were going pretty smoothly. Until one of the old guard decided to get petty. Let me introduce you to Gerald, 67M, a long-time resident who's been on the board for over a decade until I basically knocked his friend Karen off her unofficial HOA throne. Gerald is the kind of guy who mows his lawn in khakis and still uses a paper planner with every neighbor's infractions scribbled inside. He didn't take my election well. 1. The passive-aggressive phase. At first, it was little things. He kept forgetting to CC me on board emails. Ignored my requests during meetings. Referred to me as the gnome lady in a clearly mocking tone. Whatever. I was used to petty. I let it slide. Until he tried to vote behind my back to reinstate the original decoration rule. He called an emergency meeting with just 2 other board members while I was out of town for work. I only found out because a neighbor texted me asking, "Hey, is it true they're trying to ban yard art again?" I was livid. I showed up to the next board meeting with a printed copy of the HOA bylaws. The exact number of votes needed for a quorum, which they didn't meet. A recording of the last official meeting where we voted to pass the new policy. Then I looked Gerald dead in the eye and said, "Trying to overturn a board decision without quorum is not only invalid, it's against HOA code." This meeting never happened. The other board members awkwardly agreed. Score: me, 1, Gerald, 0. 2. The fake complaint scheme. 2 weeks later, I get a letter in the mail. Another violation. Reason: yard clutter exceeding community standards. Guess what the clutter was? A tiny, solar-powered butterfly light next to Frank the gnome. That's it. So I submitted a formal appeal and asked for photographic proof. What do I get? A blurry photo clearly taken from someone's phone, from Gerald's front porch. I knew it was him. So at the next HOA meeting, I presented my appeal and added, "I also want to note that our bylaws require violation photos to be taken by HOA staff or board members during authorized inspection periods. This photo was taken privately and unethically." Another board member asked where the photo came from. Gerald stayed quiet. Red-faced. Sweating. The complaint was dismissed. Strike 2, Gerald. 3. The final blow, Gerald's secret slush fund. Now here's where it gets wild. Remember how I said we were looking into shady HOA finances? Well, a few of us started doing a deep audit of the annual budgets. And guess what we found? A landscaping maintenance fund that was pulling $2,000 per year. Paid to a vendor that didn't exist. There was no contractor license, no website, no real invoices. Payments signed off by, yep, Gerald. Turns out, Gerald was paying his grandson's side hustle lawn service under the table to mow the park's grass, and charging double the going rate. No disclosure. No competitive bidding. Totally against the rules. We took the evidence to the full board. 4. The fallout. Gerald was voted off the board. We reported the financial misconduct to the HOA's management company. The landscaping contract was terminated. His family? Furious. He's still in the neighborhood, but now he avoids everyone. And me? I'm still on the board. Still sipping tea. Still watching Frank the gnome glow peacefully under his butterfly light. I guess you could say Gerald got gnomed. TLDR. Old HOA board member tried to sabotage me after I reformed our petty rules. He held secret meetings. Sent fake violations. Got caught misusing HOA funds. Now he's off the board, and I'm just getting started.